Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by wishing you peace and all good things from God. My son is getting his PhD in neuroscience, and we've had many interesting conversations about the brain. I've learned a lot of fascinating facts about how it works. Recently, he told me that when we experience something negative, several parts of our brain are activated. I think the number was 14. 14 different parts of our brain become engaged when we experience something negative. And this negative experience doesn't have to actually have happened. It can also come from a negative portrayal that someone sees on TV or in the movies, which is why UPF works in the media to help change that. But it is harder than it may seem, because as my son also pointed out, when we experience or see something positive, far fewer parts of our brains respond. In some cases, only one. That is why bad memories have a habit of sticking around, while we forget so many good ones. Now, this makes sense. It was probably more important for our survival back in the hunter-gatherer days, when our brains were evolving, to remember where, say, the saber-toothed tigers lived than to recall a pretty field or a patch of flowers. But now that most of our experience comes from the media, which is full of negative images all the time, this bears further thought. Now, what I'm about to say isn't science, as my very scientific son would be the first to point out. But it is something that this particular science leads me to reflect on. If 14 parts of our brains are activated when responding to something negative, then it stands to reason that it takes 14 positive experiences or impressions with that same thing to overcome such an opinion. Now, this relates to something that Muslims and indeed all minorities who strive to break negative stereotypes know all too well. How many of us have felt that despite our best efforts to demonstrate the goodness in Islam, that we can't seem to overcome the negative impressions that many people have formed? I know that is discouraging, and at times I myself have felt very demoralized by this, since my work is in the changing hearts and minds business. But on the other hand, there is hope in this idea that suggests that our efforts maybe are never wasted. Because if it takes 14 positive impressions to overcome one negative one, then the kind of race toward good that we're all in isn't a 20-yard dash or even a marathon, but rather it's a relay race. We all have some leg in it, we just don't know which one. In some cases, you may be the first positive impression that a person receives. You may be the 5th, the 10th. None of them result yet in a change of heart or mind of the person receiving them. But you've carried the baton of good further down the track. And somewhere up the line, as long as others pick up that baton and continue the race, eventually it will be handed to the 14th person when change happens. And sometimes you will be the 14th person who makes it happen, perhaps even on a large scale. Therefore, never be discouraged if you only receive negative reactions from acting on your faith. One way or the other, you've moved forward in the race to the good. So forget about the sports chants that we are number one. Do the virtue chant. I am number 14. Make a difference. Find a way to make the Muslim story compelling. And if you can, help tell it to the world. I am Alex Kronemer. I'm not a great religious scholar or the best Muslim I know, but I've met some of them, and I want to share a little of what they've taught me with you.